Morgan Freeman's stomach tightened as Captain Richards' eyes narrowed with contempt. "Do you belong here?" he demanded, blocking her path to the cockpit. Little did he know, the papers in her designer briefcase would silence him forever and change Aurora Airlines' future completely. Before we dive into this shocking story of discrimination and ultimate triumph, let me know where you're watching from in the comments. Hit that like button if you've ever witnessed someone being underestimated, and subscribe to catch more stories of justice being served. Now let's see how Morgan Freeman turned the tables on a man who never saw her coming. The gleaming headquarters of Aurora Airlines towered 40 stories above downtown Chicago, its glass exterior reflecting the morning sunlight like a beacon. Morgan Freeman adjusted her Hermes scarf and straightened her tailored navy Armani suit as she approached the revolving doors. At 35, she carried herself with the confidence of someone who belonged in the executive suite of any corporation in America. Her natural hair was styled in an elegant updo, and her makeup was subtle yet flawless. The Louboutin heels clicking against the marble floor announced her arrival with authority. "Excuse me, ma'am. The employment office is in the East Wing," the security guard called out as Morgan walked directly toward the executive elevator bank. Morgan paused, a familiar knot forming in her stomach. She had prepared for this, expected it even, but it still stung. Turning slowly, she offered a practice smile. "I have an appointment with the executive team," she replied calmly, presenting her visitor badge that had been arranged in advance. The guard examined it with obvious suspicion. "This says you have clearance for the executive floor. Are you sure you're in the right building?" "Quite sure," Morgan responded, her voice never wavering despite the flush of heat rising up her neck. As she rode the elevator to the 38th floor, Morgan closed her eyes and breathed deeply. This was far from the first time she'd been questioned about her presence in spaces dominated by white men. Her mind drifted back to Detroit, 25 years earlier. Her father, William Freeman, had been one of the first black Air Force pilots in his squadron during Vietnam. Despite his decorated service record and thousands of flight hours, commercial airlines had rejected his applications with thinly veiled excuses about fit and experience. She remembered finding him at their kitchen table late one night. Rejected, letters spread before him. "Why do they keep saying no, Daddy?" 10-year-old Morgan had asked. William had pulled her onto his lap. "Because sometimes people can't see past the color of your skin to the quality of your mind and heart," he'd explained. "But that doesn't mean you stop trying. The sky belongs to everyone, Little Wing." From that moment, Morgan had been determined to claim her piece of that sky. She'd excelled academically, earning a full scholarship to Howard University for her undergraduate degree, followed by an MBA from Harvard. While her classmates pursued jobs at prestigious firms, Morgan had focused on building her investment portfolio, starting with small tech companies and eventually expanding into various industries. The elevator doors opened onto the executive floor, pulling Morgan back to the present. Her heart raced with anticipation. None of the people she would meet today knew that over the past 3 years, she had strategically acquired shares of Aurora Airlines through various investment vehicles. As of last week, she owned 51% of the company, making her the majority shareholder. The papers finalizing the acquisition were tucked safely in her briefcase. She had kept her identity hidden during the acquisition process, working through proxies and shell companies. Today was supposed to be her first official inspection as the new owner, with plans to reveal herself at the board meeting scheduled for the following week. But first, she wanted to experience the airline's culture firsthand, without the facade people would inevitably present to the owner. Morgan checked her watch. She had arranged to tour the operations center and pilot training facility before meeting with the executive team. Following the directions on her visitor information, she made her way toward the bridge connecting the headquarters to the operations building. As she approached the restricted area that housed the pilot briefing rooms and simulators, a tall figure stepped into her path. Captain James Richards, Aurora's most senior pilot and the head of flight operations, stood with his arms crossed over his chest. At 58, Richards had been with the airline for 30 years and was known for his old-school mentality. His silver hair and weathered face gave him an air of authority that he wielded like a weapon. "This is a restricted area," he said, his voice clipped and cold. His eyes scanned her from head to toe, lingering on her visitor badge. "I have clearance," Morgan replied, pointing to the badge. "I'm here to tour the facilities." Richards's eyebrows rose skeptically. "And you are?" "Morgan Freeman. I'm here to evaluate operations on behalf of the new ownership." Richards snorted. "You? An evaluator for our flight operations?" He looked around as if expecting someone to jump out and announce it was all a joke. "Where's your escort?" "I was told someone would meet me here," Morgan replied, maintaining her composure despite the rising tension. "Well, no one informed me," Richards said. "And I don't appreciate consultants wandering around sensitive areas without proper supervision, especially those without any apparent aviation background." By now, several other pilots had gathered nearby, watching the exchange with curious expressions. Morgan felt their eyes on her, saw the smirks being exchanged. "I assure you, Captain Richards, I have every right to be here," Morgan stated firmly. Richards stepped closer, towering over her despite her heels. "Do you belong here?" he demanded loudly enough for everyone to hear. "Because from where I stand, you look like someone who took a wrong turn on their way to a fashion show." Morgan felt a familiar surge of anger and humiliation. Throughout her career, she had endured countless moments like this, being questioned, dismissed, belittled. She thought of her father and countless others who had faced barriers she was now positioned to remove. She could pull out the ownership papers right now. She could watch Richard's face drain of color as he realized his career was in her hands. She could savor that moment of shock and fear. But then what? The company would scramble to present a false front of inclusivity. The real culture, the one that allowed Richards to speak to her this way without consequence, would remain hidden beneath a veneer of sudden respect for the boss. No, Morgan decided. She needed to see the truth before she could change it. "Perhaps there's been a misunderstanding," she said instead, her voice steady despite the storm raging inside her. "I'll contact Mr. Chen in finance, who arranged my visit." Richard's posture relaxed slightly, interpreting her response as submission. "That would be best. In the meantime, please wait in the lobby area. Restricted means restricted, regardless of whatever consultant badge they've given you." As Morgan turned to leave, she overheard Richards mutter to another pilot, "Diversity. Consultants getting more aggressive these days. Probably another lawsuit in the making." Morgan walked away, her back straight and her head high. She hadn't revealed her trump card yet, but she would. And when she did, Richards would learn exactly where she belonged. The following morning, Morgan arrived at Aurora headquarters with a new strategy. Rather than immediately revealing her ownership, she would continue under the guise of a consultant hired by the mysterious new majority owner. This approach would give her unfettered access to observe the company's true culture before implementing changes. Thomas Chen, Aurora's chief financial officer, met her in the lobby. At 42, Chen was relatively young for his position, with a reputation for progressive thinking and financial brilliance. He was one of the few executives aware of Morgan's true identity, a necessary confidant for her plan to work. "Ms. Freeman," he greeted her with a professional handshake. "I apologize for yesterday's confusion. I've arranged for your full access to all departments today." "Thank you, Mr. Chen," Morgan replied. "And thank you for keeping our arrangement confidential." Chen nodded discreetly. "The executive team believes you're evaluating company culture for the new owner. No one knows the owner is you." "Perfect," Morgan said. "I want authentic interactions, not performances." Their first stop was the Flight Operations Center, a vast room filled with screens tracking Aurora's fleet across the globe. Morgan noticed immediately how the staff segregated themselves. White male dispatchers clustered at the prime workstations, while women and people of color occupied peripheral positions. "Who assigns the workstations?" Morgan asked Chen quietly. "Technically, it's first come, first served," Chen replied. "But there are unwritten rules. Certain dispatchers believe they're entitled to specific stations." Morgan made a mental note as they continued their tour. Throughout the morning, she observed subtle and not so subtle indicators of discrimination. from crew scheduling that consistently paired minority flight attendants with the most difficult routes to the notable absence of diversity among supervisors and managers. During a break in the employee cafeteria, Morgan noticed a black flight attendant sitting alone despite the crowded tables. Something about the woman's dignified isolation drew Morgan to introduce herself. "May I join you?" Morgan asked. The flight attendant looked up with surprise. "Of course," she said, extending her hand. "Eliza Washington." "Morgan Freeman. I'm consulting for the new ownership." Eliza's eyebrows rose slightly. "New ownership? That's the first I've heard of it." "It hasn't been officially announced," Morgan explained. "I'm evaluating company culture." Eliza gave a small, knowing smile. "Well, you've certainly come to the right place for that." Over the next 20 minutes, Eliza shared her 10-year experience at Aurora. Despite consistently positive passenger feedback and perfect attendance, she had been passed over for promotion 7 times. "The last time, they told me I didn't fit the image they wanted for their leadership team," Eliza said, her voice matter-of-fact despite the injustice. Meanwhile, Julie, who started 3 years after me and calls in sick at least once a month, is now a purser. "Have you filed complaints?" Morgan asked. 3 times, Eliza replied. "Each one mysteriously disappeared from my file. After the 3rd one, my supervisor told me I should be grateful to have the job at all." As they parted ways, Morgan slipped Eliza her business card. "If you think of anything else that might help me understand the company better, please call." Throughout the afternoon, Morgan continued gathering evidence of systemic discrimination. In human resources, she requested anonymized data on hiring, promotions, and terminations, noting the disproportionate impact on minority employees. In the training department, she observed how minority pilot candidates received harsher evaluations for the same performance as their white counterparts. Around 3 o'clock, Morgan heard a familiar voice booming down the hallway. Captain Richards was holding court with several other senior pilots outside the simulator room. So I said to her, "Do you belong here?" Richards laughed, clearly recounting their encounter from the previous day. You should have seen her face. Another diversity hire thinking she can evaluate real pilots. The group chuckled appreciatively, unaware of Morgan standing just around the corner. She remained still, listening as Richards continued. "Mark my words. This new owner is going to run this airline into the ground if they keep pushing this diversity nonsense. Flying planes isn't about checking identity boxes, it's about skill and experience." "Hear, hear," another voice agreed. "Remember when we actually hired based on qualifications?" Morgan had heard enough. She stepped around the corner, causing an immediate hush to fall over the group. Richards's smile faltered momentarily before hardening into a look of disdain. "Ms. Freeman," he said coldly, "still evaluating us?" "Still gathering data, Captain Richards," Morgan replied with professional detachment. "I understand you have strong opinions about hiring practices. I'd love to hear more about your perspective on what qualifies someone to work at Aurora." Richards narrowed his eyes, clearly trying to determine if she was setting a trap. "Aviation is a meritocracy, Ms. Freeman. The sky doesn't care about your feelings or your background. Either you can fly or you can't." "Interesting," Morgan said. "And who determines merit at Aurora?" "People who understand aviation," Richards replied. "Not consultants with fashion degrees." Morgan smiled pleasantly. "I actually have an MBA from Harvard, Captain, but I appreciate your concern about qualifications. Would you mind showing me the simulator facility now? I'd like to understand how pilot performance is evaluated." Richards hesitated, caught between refusing a direct request from the owner's representative and maintaining his authority. Finally, he gestured stiffly toward the door. 20 minutes. We have actual training scheduled today." The simulator tour revealed even more biases in the training program. Morgan observed as a young black pilot trainee struggled under Richards's hypercritical instruction, being failed for minor issues that she noticed white trainees were coached through instead. Later that afternoon, Morgan met privately with Thomas Chen to share her observations. "It's worse than I imagined," she admitted. "The discrimination isn't just interpersonal, It's baked into every system and process. Chen nodded grimly. I've been trying to implement diversity initiatives for years, but there's always resistance from Richards and his allies on the board. Speaking of the board, Morgan said, what can you tell me about Victoria Klein in HR? She seemed unusually helpful today. Chen smiled. Victoria's been fighting the good fight longer than I have. She knows how to work within the system while trying to change it. I think she suspects who you really are, though she hasn't said anything directly. Just then, Chen's phone buzzed with a text message. His expression grew serious as he read it. What is it? Morgan asked. Victoria, he replied. She says Jackson Miller, our VP of Operations, was asking unusual questions about you after seeing you with me today. He's Richard's closest ally in the executive team. Morgan frowned. Could he have discovered my identity? It's possible, Chen said. Miller has connections throughout the industry. If he's suspicious enough to start digging... Morgan's phone rang, interrupting their conversation. The screen displayed unknown caller. With a sense of foreboding, she answered and put it on speaker. Ms. Freeman, a digitally altered voice said, we know who you really are. The question is, does everyone else need to know before you're ready? Check your email. The call disconnected. Seconds later, Morgan's email pinged with a new message containing just one attachment, a copy of her confidential purchase agreement for Aurora Airlines shares. Stay in your lane or crash and burn. Morgan stared at the anonymous message that had arrived in her email inbox, her heart pounding against her ribs like a trapped bird. The threat wasn't subtle. Attached to the email were copies of her confidential acquisition documents proving someone had access to her private financial information. This is serious, Thomas Chen said, his normally calm voice tinged with worry. Whoever sent this has connections deep inside our financial systems or your investment firm. Morgan paced the small conference room they had commandeered as their temporary headquarters. The only people who knew about my acquisition were my attorney, my investment team, and you, she said. I trust all of you implicitly. Which means someone hacked into secure systems, Thomas concluded. The question is, what do they want? Before Morgan could respond, her phone buzzed with a text from an unfamiliar number. Executive bathroom. 5 minutes. Come alone. A friend. Morgan showed the message to Thomas, who immediately shook his head. It could be a trap. Or it could be someone with information, Morgan countered. Wait here. If I'm not back in 15 minutes, call security. 5 minutes later, Morgan pushed open the door to the executive restroom, her senses on high alert. Victoria Klein, the HR director, was washing her hands at the sink. When she saw Morgan, she quickly checked under the stalls to ensure they were alone. I don't have much time, Victoria whispered. Jackson Miller knows who you are. He accessed your acquisition records through a contact at First National Bank. How do you know this? Morgan asked. Because he's bragging about it to his inner circle, Victoria replied. He and Richards are planning something to force you out before you can take control officially. They've moved up the board meeting to tomorrow morning. Tomorrow? Morgan's mind raced. That's too soon. I'm not prepared. That's the point, Victoria said grimly. Miller has been laying groundwork with board members, suggesting you're a corporate raider planning to dismantle the airline. Richards is talking about organizing pilot walkouts if unqualified ownership takes control. Morgan took a deep breath, processing this information. Thank you, Victoria. Why are you helping me? Victoria's eyes hardened. I've worked here for 20 years. I've seen countless talented people like Eliza Washington held back because of who they are, not what they can do. I've filed reports, raised concerns, and watched them all disappear. Maybe you'll be different. After Victoria left, Morgan returned to Thomas with the new information. They spent the rest of the afternoon developing countermeasures, reaching out to sympathetic board members and documenting the discrimination they'd observed. As evening approached, Morgan decided to visit the pilot training center once more. There, she witnessed a scene that crystallized everything wrong with Aurora Airlines culture. Captain Richards was evaluating Alexander Davis, a promising black pilot trainee in his final simulator check. Despite Alexander executing a perfect emergency procedure, Richards failed him on subjective criteria. "Your communication style isn't confident enough," Richards declared loudly for all to hear. "Passengers wouldn't trust you in a real emergency." Alexander maintained his composure, but Morgan could see the devastation in his eyes. This wasn't just a failed check ride. It was another barrier placed in his path because of his race. When Richards left, Morgan approached Alexander, who was gathering his materials. "That was a perfect emergency response," she said. Alexander looked up, surprised. "You know aviation procedures?" "My father was an Air Force pilot," Morgan replied. "I grew up surrounded by aviation talk. What happened in there wasn't about your skills." Alexander's shoulders slumped. "It never is. This is my third attempt. One more failure and I'm out of the program no matter how perfect my flying is." Morgan handed him her card. "Don't give up. Things are about to change around here." As she turned to leave, she found her path blocked by Richards, his face flushed with anger. "Interfering with training now?" he demanded. "You have no authority here." "I'm observing company practices for the new owner," Morgan replied calmly, "including how consistently evaluation standards are applied." Richards stepped closer, lowering his voice. "Listen carefully. Aurora Airlines isn't some diversity experiment. It's a premier carrier built by real aviators. Whatever consultant report you're preparing, it won't change anything." "We'll see about that," Morgan replied, refusing to be intimidated. Richards' next words sent a chill through her. "I know exactly who you are, Ms. Freeman, or should I say majority shareholder. Your little undercover game is over." Before Morgan could respond, Richards continued. "The board won't let some unqualified investor with an agenda destroy this airline. By this time tomorrow, your majority stake won't matter." As Richards walked away, Morgan's phone buzzed with a notification. Someone had accessed her personal financial records again, this time extracting information about every company she had ever invested in, every property she owned, and her complete banking history. What do you think about Captain Richards' behavior? Comment 1 if you believe his actions reflect systemic racism in corporate America, or 2 if you think he's just protecting company standards. Don't forget to hit that like button if you're eager to see how Morgan will handle this shocking revelation that her cover is blown. Subscribe now to make sure you don't miss what happens next. Will Morgan expose Richards immediately, or does she have a more strategic plan in mind? Let's find out as our story continues. The morning sun had barely crested the Chicago skyline when Morgan's phone erupted with notifications. Her stomach dropped as she scrolled through dozens of news alerts and messages. Someone had leaked her personal and financial information to select board members and aviation industry blogs overnight, triggering a coordinated smear campaign. "Black businesswoman's questionable rise to power," read one headline. "Aurora Airlines faces hostile takeover by diversity advocate with no aviation experience," proclaimed another. Morgan pulled up one of the articles, her hands trembling slightly. As she read, sources within Aurora Airlines question how Morgan Freeman, with no aviation background, acquired the funds to purchase 51% of a major airline. Industry insiders suggest her wealth may have come from affirmative action programs and discrimination lawsuits against former employers rather than legitimate business acumen. The article included personal photos pulled from her private social media accounts and out-of-context quotes from speeches she had given about increasing diversity in corporate America. Morgan called Thomas Chen immediately. "Have you seen the news?" "I'm looking at it now," Thomas replied, his voice tight with anger. "This is a coordinated attack. They're trying to tank the company's stock value and scare the board before you can take control." "Any idea who leaked my information?" Morgan asked, though she already suspected the answer. "Had to be Miller," Thomas confirmed. "He has the access and the motivation. Richards is doing his part too. He called an informal meeting of senior pilots this morning. My source tells me they're discussing potential walkouts if unqualified ownership takes control." Morgan closed her eyes, fighting back waves of anger and anxiety. This wasn't just about her anymore. Thousands of employees' livelihoods hung In the balance, not to mention the discrimination that would continue unchecked if she failed. "What about the board meeting?" she asked. "Still scheduled for 10 a.m., Thomas replied. "But Miller has been working the phones all night. I count at least 4 board members who may have flipped to his side." "Keep tracking the situation," Morgan instructed. "I need to make a stop before heading to headquarters." 40 minutes later, Morgan pulled into the parking lot of Northwestern Memorial Hospital. Her father had been admitted the previous night, after experiencing chest pains, stress from watching his daughter face the same discrimination he had battled his entire career. William Freeman looked frail against the white hospital sheets, but his eyes lit up when Morgan entered the room. At 70, he still had the commanding presence that had made him respected in the Air Force, despite the racism he had encountered. "There's my little wing," he said, using his childhood nickname for her. "Come to check on your old man?" Morgan kissed his forehead, fighting back tears. "How are you feeling?" "Just a warning shot," William replied, tapping his chest. "Doctor says my heart's as stubborn as the rest of me, but enough about that. I saw the news." Morgan sighed, sinking into the chair beside his bed. "They're trying to force me out before I can take control, using every trick in the book." William reached for her hand. "Remember what I told you when you were 10 years old? The sky belongs to everyone," Morgan recited softly. "That's right," William affirmed. "Those men, Richards and his cronies, they think they own the sky. They've spent decades keeping people who look like us grounded, but you've got something they don't expect." "What's that?" Morgan asked. "The wind beneath your wings," William said, squeezing her hand. "All those people who've been waiting for their chance to soar. You fight for them, not just yourself." Morgan nodded, drawing strength from her father's words. "I won't let them win." "That's my girl," William smiled. "Now go show them what a Freeman is made of." As Morgan drove to Aurora headquarters, her phone rang with a call from Thomas. "Morgan, we've got another problem," he said urgently. "I just heard that Richards and Miller are meeting with executives from Sky Global Airlines this afternoon." "Sky Global?" Morgan's knuckles whitened on the steering wheel. "They're our biggest competitor." "Exactly," Thomas confirmed. "My source says they're discussing a potential hostile takeover. If Sky Global makes an offer, Miller will present it at today's board meeting as an alternative to your leadership." Morgan processed this new threat. Sky Global was known for aggressive cost-cutting and anti-union practices. If they acquired Aurora, thousands would lose their jobs, and any hope of creating a more equitable workplace would vanish. When Morgan arrived at headquarters, the tension was palpable. Employees whispered as she passed, some openly staring. News of her ownership had clearly spread throughout the company. In the elevator, Morgan checked her messages and found a text from Eliza Washington. "They suspended me today. Fabricated customer complaint. Need to talk." Before Morgan could respond, another message came through from Alexander Davis. "Failed my check ride again. Richards was the examiner, thinking of quitting the program." The injustice fueled Morgan's determination. This wasn't just about her ownership stake anymore. It was about changing a toxic culture that crushed the dreams of talented people because of their race. Morgan texted both Eliza and Alexander to meet her at a coffee shop across from headquarters in an hour. She needed allies who understood what was at stake. At the coffee shop, Eliza arrived first, still wearing her flight attendant uniform, minus the company scarf. "They didn't even let me change," she explained bitterly. "Security escorted me out like a criminal. 15 years of perfect service, and this is how they treat me." Alexander arrived minutes later, looking equally defeated. "One more failed. Check ride and I'm out," he said. 3 years of training and student loans down the drain." Morgan looked at their despondent faces and made a decision. "I need to tell you both something in confidence," she said, lowering her voice. "I'm not just a consultant. I recently acquired 51% ownership of Aurora Airlines." Their expressions shifted from shock to cautious hope as Morgan explained her vision for transforming the company. "I need your help," she concluded. "You know the culture from the inside. You've experienced the discrimination firsthand. Will you help me document it and build a case for change? In a heartbeat, Eliza replied without hesitation. Alexander nodded firmly. Whatever you need. With their agreement, Morgan outlined her plan. Eliza would reach out to other flight attendants who had experienced discrimination, while Alexander would connect with minority pilot trainees who had been unfairly evaluated. Together, they would build a comprehensive picture of the systemic issues plaguing Aurora. As they finalized details, Morgan's phone buzzed with a text from Thomas. Emergency board meeting called for 4 p.m. Sky Global made an offer. Miller pushing for immediate vote. Morgan's heart sank. The timeline had accelerated dramatically. She had hours, not days, to prepare her counterattack. I have to go, she told Eliza and Alexander. The board is meeting at 4 to vote on a rival acquisition offer. Will you reveal yourself as the owner? Eliza asked. Morgan nodded. I have no choice now, but I'm not sure it will be enough. The board could still vote to accept Sky Global's offer. Then you need more ammunition, Alexander said decisively. Something beyond discrimination documentation. Morgan's phone rang again. Victoria from HR. Morgan, I found something you need to see immediately, she said without preamble. Financial records showing Miller has been siphoning company funds for personal use. And there's more. Richards has been receiving bonuses for every minority employee who leaves the company, disguised as retention initiatives for those who stay. Send everything to my secure email, Morgan instructed. And Victoria, thank you. As Morgan ended the call, she felt a momentary surge of confidence. Maybe she could win this fight after all. Then her phone buzzed with another text, this time from a pilot she had never met. Ms. Freeman, we haven't met, but I have information. About Captain Richards you need to see before the board meeting. It involves a safety cover-up from 5 years ago. Meet me in the parking garage, level 3, in 20 minutes. Morgan stared at the message, torn between caution and the need for any advantage. This could be crucial evidence, or it could be a trap. I'll come with you, Alexander volunteered, reading the indecision on her face. Me too, Eliza added. Safety in numbers. With her new allies beside her, Morgan headed for the parking garage, unaware that across town, Captain Richards was showing the Sky Global executives fabricated performance reports suggesting Aurora would collapse under Morgan's leadership. The clock was ticking toward the emergency board meeting, and with it, the future of everyone at Aurora Airlines hung in the balance. For the first time since this battle began, Morgan felt a flicker of doubt. What if she wasn't strong enough to fight the entrenched power structure? What if she failed not just herself, but everyone counting on her to create change? She thought of her father's words in the hospital room. The sky belongs to everyone. With renewed determination, Morgan straightened her shoulders. She hadn't come this far to be grounded now. The Aurora Airlines boardroom exuded old-world power. Mahogany table, leather chairs, and floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Chicago skyline. Morgan stood outside the double doors, gathering her courage as board members filed past her, with curious glances. None acknowledged her directly. Most averted their eyes, uncomfortable with the confrontation to come. Inside, Jackson Miller had orchestrated the seating arrangement strategically. Board members sympathetic to his cause sat on his right, while those still undecided were positioned where he could make eye contact. At the head of the table sat Edgar Whitmore, the 75-year-old board chairman, whose family had founded Aurora Airlines 3 generations ago. Most shocking was Captain Richards' presence at the table, seated prominently beside Miller despite having no official board position. "What is he doing here?" Thomas whispered to Morgan as they entered. "He's not a board member." "Intimidation. Tactics," Morgan replied quietly. "Let's not give them the reaction they want." As Morgan and Thomas took the only remaining seats at the far end of the table, Chairman Whitmore called the emergency meeting to order. "As you all know, we face an extraordinary situation," Whitmore began, his voice carrying the weight of authority. "Sky Global Airlines has made an offer to acquire Aurora at a 20% premium over current market value. Given recent revelations about our majority shareholder, The board must decide whether this offer is in the best interest of our company and shareholders. Miller leaned forward, barely containing his eagerness. If I may, Mr. Chairman, I believe we should hear from Captain Richards before proceeding. As our most senior pilot, he can speak to operational concerns that affect this decision. Whitmore nodded, and Richards rose, adjusting his uniform jacket with its 4 gold stripes gleaming under the recessed lighting. Ladies and gentlemen of the board, Richards began with practiced gravity. I've devoted 30 years to making Aurora one of the safest airlines in the world. That reputation rests on maintaining the highest standards, standards that cannot be compromised for social engineering or diversity quotas. Morgan watched as several board members nodded in agreement. The documents circulated to you demonstrate that Ms. Freeman has no aviation experience whatsoever, Richards continued. Her background is in activist investing with a clear agenda to prioritize diversity over safety and operational excellence. That's false, Morgan interjected, unable to remain silent in the face of such blatant mischaracterization. Richards turned cold eyes toward her. With all due respect, Ms. Freeman, you misrepresented yourself to enter restricted areas of our operations. Your actions demonstrate a concerning disregard for aviation protocols and security procedures. Before Morgan could respond, Miller smoothly took control again. The fact remains that Sky Global's offer provides certainty for our shareholders, employees, and customers. Their management team has extensive aviation experience and a proven track record. What about their track record of layoffs and union busting? Thomas challenged. Sky Global eliminated 30% of staff after their last 3 acquisitions. Miller waved dismissively. Standard industry consolidation. Now I suggest we move to a vote on whether to accept Sky Global's offer. Before we vote, Chairman Whitmore interjected, I believe we should hear from Ms. Freeman as she currently holds majority ownership. All eyes turned to Morgan. This was her moment, the culmination of years of planning and the last 3 days of confronting discrimination head-on. She rose slowly, commanding the room with her presence despite the hostility directed toward her. Mr. Chairman, members of the board, she began, her voice steady and assured. 3 days ago, Captain Richards asked me if I belonged here. Today, I answered definitively. Yes, I do. Morgan removed a folder from her briefcase and handed copies of her ownership documentation to each board member. As the majority shareholder of Aurora Airlines, I have spent the past 3 days experiencing your company culture firsthand. What I found was deeply troubling. Systematic discrimination that has not only harmed employees, but damaged Aurora's potential for excellence. Richard scoffed loudly. This is exactly the kind of social justice warrior rhetoric. Captain Richards, Morgan cut him off firmly. You've had your say. Now it's my turn. The unexpected authority in her voice silenced him momentarily, and Morgan continued. During my investigation, I witnessed qualified minority employees being passed over for promotion, subjected to different standards, and systematically pushed out of the company. I've documented dozens of instances where company policies were applied unequally based on race. Morgan nodded to Thomas, who distributed additional folders containing the evidence they had gathered. But this isn't just about social justice, Morgan continued. It's about business excellence. Aurora is losing talented employees, facing increased turnover costs, and risking costly discrimination lawsuits. Most importantly, you're losing the diverse perspectives that drive innovation and growth in today's global marketplace. Several board members began reviewing the documentation with concerned expressions. Morgan pressed her advantage. I didn't acquire Aurora to dismantle it or impose arbitrary quotas. I invested because I believe in this airline's potential to be truly exceptional, not despite diversity, but because of it. Morgan paused, looking directly at Richards. My father was William Freeman, one of the first black Air Force pilots in his squadron during Vietnam. After his service, every major airline rejected him despite his thousands of flight hours and exemplary record. A murmur went through the room. William Freeman's name was recognized by several of the older board members. Aviation is in my blood, Morgan continued. I grew up studying flight manuals and aircraft specifications at my father's knee. While I chose business rather than becoming a pilot myself, I never lost my connection to aviation. Richards' face had reddened, but Morgan wasn't finished. What Captain Richards failed to mention is that I'm also a licensed private pilot. I understand both aviation and business, a combination this airline desperately needs. Morgan walked slowly around the table, making eye contact with each board member. The choice before you today isn't between diversity and excellence. It's between clinging to discriminatory practices that limit our potential, or embracing a future where Aurora leads the industry in both performance and inclusion. Miller attempted to regain control. This is all very moving, Ms. Freeman, but sentiment doesn't change the fact that Sky Global's offer provides immediate value to shareholders. Short-term value at the expense of long-term growth, Morgan countered. And at what cost to employees and customers? She placed one final document on the table. This is my vision for Aurora's future, a comprehensive plan for operational excellence, financial growth, and cultural transformation. I'm not asking you to choose diversity over performance. I'm showing you how embracing diversity drives performance. The room fell silent as board members began reviewing her plan. Chairman Whitmore adjusted his glasses, studying the document with particular attention. This is quite thorough, he admitted. However, given the complexity of these issues and the competing offer from Sky Global, I believe we need time for proper consideration. Richards stood abruptly. Mr. Chairman, delay only creates uncertainty. We should vote now. I disagree, said Whitmore firmly. The board will take 1 week to review Ms. Freeman's documentation and plan, along with the Sky Global offer. We will reconvene next Thursday for a final decision. Richards and Miller exchanged alarmed glances. This wasn't the quick victory they had anticipated. As the meeting adjourned, Morgan gathered her materials, aware that she had won a reprieve, not a victory. The real battle was just beginning. Outside the boardroom, she overheard Richards speaking urgently into his phone. She's more prepared than we expected. We need to accelerate the plan. Meet me at Giovanni's in an hour with the Sky Global team. Morgan caught Thomas's eye, and he nodded to indicate he'd heard too. The next week would determine not just Morgan's future as owner, but the future of everyone at Aurora Airlines. She had 1 week to solidify her position and expose Richards and Miller before they could undermine her completely. As she left headquarters, Morgan called her father's hospital room. "How did it go, Little Wing?" William asked. "We bought some time," Morgan replied. "The board's deliberating for a week." "Remember," William said, his voice stronger than it had been that morning. "In a storm, the most important thing is to maintain control of the aircraft. You've got the controls now. Don't let go." "I won't, Dad," Morgan promised. "The sky belongs to everyone, and I intend to prove it." The morning after the board meeting, Morgan awoke to discover Dr. Boycott Aurora trending on social media. Overnight, Richards and Miller had launched their counterattack, a coordinated campaign questioning Aurora Airlines' stability under Morgan's ownership. "Unqualified activist investor threatens aviation safety," proclaimed one headline on an industry blog known to be friendly with Richards. Another article featured carefully selected and edited quotes from speeches Morgan had given years ago about increasing diversity in corporate America, framing them as anti-merit and dangerous to aviation standards. Most concerning were the pilot forums where anonymous accounts claiming to be Aurora employees discussed potential walkouts and safety concerns. The message was clear. Aurora would become unsafe and unreliable under Morgan's leadership. "They're trying to tank the company's reputation and stock price," Thomas explained during their morning strategy call. "If customers cancel bookings and investors panic, the board might see Sky Global as the only stable option." "How are employees reacting?" Morgan asked. "Mixed," Thomas replied. "Some are buying the propaganda, others are waiting to see what happens. There's a lot of fear and uncertainty." Morgan considered her options. "We need to counteract their narrative without getting pulled into a public relations war that could damage the airline further." "I have an idea," Thomas suggested. "What if we implement your open-door policy immediately? Invite employees to share their experiences, good and bad, about working at Aurora. It would demonstrate your leadership style while gathering more evidence of discrimination." "Perfect," Morgan agreed. Set it up in a neutral location, not Richard's territory. And Thomas? Make sure security is present but discreet. I wouldn't put it past Richards to try disrupting the meetings. Throughout that day, Morgan met with dozens of employees from various departments. The stories they shared confirmed everything she had observed and more. A Hispanic maintenance technician who had invented a tool that saved the company thousands of dollars in repair time, but received no recognition or compensation. A Muslim customer service agent who was always assigned to the back office, away from passengers, despite winning multiple service awards. A white female pilot who had filed 3 sexual harassment complaints against senior captains, including Richards, all of which had mysteriously disappeared from her file. By late afternoon, the pattern was undeniable. Aurora Airlines had a deeply entrenched culture of discrimination that extended far beyond race to include gender, religion, and age. As the last employee left, Eliza Washington arrived with additional testimonies from flight attendants who couldn't attend in person due to flight schedules. The response has been overwhelming, Eliza reported. Once people realized they weren't alone, the floodgates opened. Everyone has a story. This is powerful, Morgan acknowledged, reviewing the statements. But Richards and Miller will dismiss it as disgruntled employees trying to curry favor with the new boss. Then we need something they can't dismiss, Eliza replied. Something beyond personal testimonies. Morgan's phone buzzed with a text from Victoria in HR. Found statistical evidence. Minority employees 3x more likely to be disciplined, 5x less likely to be promoted. Sending secure file now. This helps, Morgan told Eliza after reviewing Victoria's data. But we still need something definitive that the board can't ignore. As if on cue, Alexander Davis called. Ms. Freeman, I've been talking with other pilot trainees. Richards doesn't just apply different standards to minorities. He actively sabotages them. He changed my simulator settings before my check ride to make the aircraft harder to control. Can you prove it? Morgan asked urgently. The simulator records all settings, Alexander explained. I convinced a sympathetic instructor to pull the logs. They show parameter changes made under Richard's ID right before my session. This is exactly what we need, Morgan said. Alexander, you're a lifesaver. As she ended the call, Morgan noticed a sleek black car pulling into the executive parking lot. Through the tinted windows, she could just make out Richard's silver hair in the passenger seat as the car parked in a secluded corner. Eliza, does that garage have security cameras? Morgan asked, pointing to the car. Yes, but they've been malfunctioning on that level for months, Eliza replied with knowing frustration. It's where executives meet when they don't want to be seen. Morgan made a split-second decision. I need to hear what they're discussing. Cover for me if anyone comes looking. Before Eliza could protest, Morgan slipped out and made her way to the garage, staying hidden behind concrete pillars. As she approached Richard's car, she activated the voice recorder on her phone. Sky Global is getting nervous about the delay, a man's voice said. Jackson Miller. They wanted a quick deal, not a prolonged fight. I've got it under control, Richards replied confidently. I've reached out to my contacts at the FAA about launching a special inspection of our training procedures. Once Morgan takes official control, of course. Will they find something? Asked a third voice Morgan didn't recognize. They'll find exactly what I tell them to find, Richards chuckled. I've got 20 years of relationships at the FAA. One phone call suggesting safety concerns under new management, and Aurora will be under a microscope. No airline survives that kind of scrutiny without findings. And what about the board? The unknown voice pressed. 4 solid votes for Sky Global, Miller replied. We need 3 more to swing our way. Johnson is wavering after seeing Morgan's business plan, but I've reminded him about that little indiscretion in Atlanta last year. He'll fall in line. Blackmail Richards. Really? Morgan couldn't believe what she was hearing. This went beyond discrimination into potentially criminal territory. And the Freeman woman? Asked the third voice. I'm handling her personally, Richards said, his tone menacing. I've got people digging into every aspect of her life. Everyone has skeletons. When we find hers, the board will drop her faster than a stone. Morgan had heard enough. She retreated quietly, her mind racing with implications. Richards wasn't just fighting to maintain the status quo, he was willing to sabotage the entire airline to prevent her from taking control. Back in the meeting room, she played the recording for Eliza and Thomas, who had just arrived. "This is criminal," Thomas said, visibly shaken. "Threatening to manufacture safety violations? Blackmailing board members? We need to take this to the authorities." "Not yet," Morgan cautioned. "We need more evidence. Right now it's my word against theirs, and Richards has those 20 years of relationships he mentioned." As they discussed next steps, Morgan's phone rang with an unknown number. Wary after the events of the past few days, she put it on speaker. "Ms. Freeman," a man's voice said. "You don't know me, but I have information about Captain Richards you need to see. It involves a safety incident from 5 years ago that was covered up." "Who is this?" Morgan asked cautiously. "My name is William Turner. I was a first officer at Aurora until Captain Richards blamed me for his mistake during an approach to Chicago. The incident report was falsified, and I was terminated while Richards received no discipline." Morgan's pulse quickened. "Mr. Turner, I'd like to meet with you as soon as possible. I'm taking a significant risk contacting you," Turner replied. "Richards made sure I couldn't get hired at any major airline after Aurora. I'm flying cargo routes to make ends meet now." "I understand the risk," Morgan assured him. "And I promise, if your information helps me take control of Aurora, I'll make things right for you." They arranged to meet the following morning at a hotel near the airport, away from prying eyes at headquarters. As Morgan ended the call, she felt the momentum shifting in her favor. If Turner's evidence was as damning as he suggested, it could be the key to neutralizing Richards once and for all. That evening, as Morgan returned to her hotel suite, she found an unmarked envelope that had been slipped under her door. Inside was a single photograph of her meeting with Eliza and Alexander at the coffee shop, with the words, "Race Traders," scrawled across it in red marker. The intimidation tactic only strengthened Morgan's resolve. Tomorrow she would meet with William Turner and gather the final piece of evidence she needed to secure her position as Aurora's rightful owner and begin transforming its toxic culture. As she prepared for bed, Morgan's phone buzzed with a news alert. Aurora Airlines stock drops 15% amid leadership uncertainty. Richards and Miller's campaign was working. They were damaging the company to maintain their power. How far would you go to expose workplace discrimination? Comment 1 if you believe Morgan should release all her evidence to the media immediately, or 2 if you think she should wait and build an airtight case first. Don't forget to like this video if you're rooting for Morgan to triumph over Captain Richards and his allies. Subscribe now if you're eager to see how William Turner's testimony might change everything. Will his evidence be enough to save Aurora Airlines from a hostile takeover? Keep watching to find out. The Lakeshore Hotel conference room offered privacy and discretion, exactly what Morgan needed for her meeting with William Turner. She arrived 30 minutes early to sweep the room for recording devices, a precaution that would have seemed paranoid just days ago, but now felt necessary given Richards's tactics. Thomas Chen joined her, bringing coffee and a grim update. Aurora's stock dropped another 7% this morning. Richards and Miller are calling key investors, suggesting the company is headed for turbulence under your leadership. Morgan shook her head in disgust. They're willing to destroy the airline just to maintain their power structure. It gets worse, Thomas continued. I heard from Victoria that Richards is pressuring the safety department to review our maintenance records from the past year. He's laying groundwork to claim our safety culture has already deteriorated in anticipation of your takeover. Before Morgan could respond, there was a knock at the door. William Turner entered cautiously, scanning the room before fully stepping inside. At 45, Turner carried himself with the precise posture of a career pilot, though the past 5 years had clearly taken their toll. His once crisp uniform was replaced by casual clothes, and stress lines marked his face. "Mr. Turner," Morgan said, extending her hand, "thank you for coming." Turner's handshake was firm but brief. "I'm taking a significant risk meeting you, Ms. Freeman. If Richards discovers I've contacted you, he'll make sure I never fly again, even the cargo routes I've managed to secure." "I understand," Morgan assured him. "Everything we discuss stays confidential until we're ready to act." Turner placed a sealed envelope on the table. 5 years ago, I was first officer on Flight 2377 from Denver to Chicago. Captain Richards was the pilot in command. During our approach to O'Hare in severe weather, Richards ignored my call-out about our sink rate being too high. We hit hard enough to require a maintenance inspection. Morgan listened intently as Turner continued his story. The aircraft sustained damage that should have been reported to the FAA as an incident. Instead, Richards wrote it up as a firm landing due to wind shear. When maintenance found the actual damage, Richards claimed I had failed to call out the sink rate properly. And you were blamed for his mistake, Morgan concluded. Turner nodded grimly. Richards had friends in the chief pilot's office. My voice recordings from the cockpit mysteriously developed technical issues during the critical moments of the approach. Without evidence to defend myself, I was terminated for failure to provide adequate safety inputs to the captain. He pushed the envelope toward Morgan. These are copies of the original maintenance reports before they were altered, saved by a mechanic who knew something wasn't right. He was afraid to come forward then, but when he heard about you taking over Aurora, he gave them to me. Morgan opened the envelope and examined the documents inside. The original maintenance report clearly documented damage consistent with a hard landing beyond operational limits. Damage that should have triggered mandatory reporting to the FAA and an investigation. This is exactly what we need, Morgan said, looking up from the papers. Richards covered up a safety incident and blamed you to protect himself. This goes beyond discrimination into regulatory violations. There's more, Turner said quietly. After I was fired, Richards made sure other airlines knew not to hire me. He told colleagues I was unsafe and combative. As one of the most senior captains at a major airline, his word carried weight. I went from making 6 figures to barely surviving, all because I was the convenient scapegoat for his mistake. Because you were black, Thomas added softly. Turner's jaw tightened. Richards had a history of blaming minority crew members for his errors. I wasn't the first, just the most serious case. Mr. Turner, Morgan said decisively, when I take control of Aurora Airlines, I want you back, not as a first officer, but as a senior training captain. Your experience and integrity are exactly what this airline needs. Turner's expression remained guarded. That's a generous offer, Ms. Freeman. But what happens if you don't succeed? Richards would destroy what's left of my career if he knew I was helping you. I understand your concern, Morgan acknowledged, but these documents could be the key to ensuring Richards never holds power at Aurora again. Will you testify about what happened if needed? Turner considered for a long moment. If you can guarantee my protection until the matter is resolved, yes. It's time someone stood up to Richards, and clearly, you're not afraid to do so. After Turner left, Morgan and Thomas strategized their next moves. We need to proceed carefully, Thomas advised. These maintenance documents are dynamite, but we need to verify their authenticity before making any accusations. Agreed, Morgan said. Can your contact in maintenance confirm these without alerting Richards? Before Thomas could answer, Morgan's phone buzzed with a text from Alexander Davis. Check ride with Richards scheduled for tomorrow. Instructor says he specifically requested to be my examiner again. That's unusual, Morgan frowned. Why would Richards, with everything else happening, prioritize examining a trainee pilot? Because he knows Alexander is connected to you, Thomas realized. This is another intimidation tactic. Morgan quickly texted Alexander back. Be perfect, but prepare for failure regardless of your performance. We'll fight this. She had barely sent the message when Eliza called with her own update. Morgan, I've organized a group of flight attendants to document every discriminatory incident they witness. We've already collected dozens of reports from just the past 2 days. That's excellent, Morgan replied. We're building a comprehensive case against Richards and his enablers. As she ended the call with Eliza, Thomas received an urgent text from his contact in the finance department. Miller's been embezzling, he said, looking up from his phone, in shock. He's been coding personal expenses as business costs for years, luxury vacations, home renovations, even his daughter's wedding. Can we prove it? Morgan asked. Thomas nodded. My contact has transaction records and falsified expense reports. Miller got sloppy, thinking no one would ever challenge him. For the first time since this battle began, Morgan felt they had gained the upper hand. With evidence of safety violations, discrimination, and financial misconduct, they could not only secure her position as owner, but clean house completely. Her optimism was short-lived. That afternoon, as she prepared for the next day's confrontation, Alexander called in distress. "Ms. Freeman, I just finished my check ride with Richards," he reported, his voice tight with controlled anger. "I flew perfectly. Even the other instructor said so. Richards failed me anyway, claiming my cockpit presence wasn't authoritative enough." "This is his third failure," Alexander continued. "Company policy means I'm out of the program permanently." "Not if I have anything to say about it," Morgan assured him. "Document everything while it's fresh in your mind. We'll add it to our case." After consoling Alexander, Morgan received an unexpected call from Chairman Whitmore. "Ms. Freeman," the elderly chairman began without preamble, "I've been reviewing your business plan and the evidence of discrimination you presented. I must say I find your vision for Aurora compelling." Morgan held her breath, sensing a but coming. "However," Whitmore continued, "several board members have expressed concerns about the operational disruption your takeover might cause. Captain Richards has significant support among our senior pilots." "With respect, Mr. Chairman," Morgan replied carefully, "any disruption would be orchestrated by Richards himself, not a result of my leadership." "Perhaps," Whitmore acknowledged. "Nevertheless, the board is leaning toward accepting Sky Global's offer as the safer option. Unless something changes dramatically before Thursday's vote, I believe that will be the outcome." After Whitmore hung up, Morgan sat in stunned silence. Despite all their evidence, the board was still choosing the path of least resistance, selling to Sky Global rather than confronting the discrimination embedded in Aurora's culture. "We need to consolidate our evidence and present it all at once," Thomas suggested. "Safety violations, discrimination, financial misconduct, the complete picture." Morgan nodded slowly. "And we need to neutralize Richards' influence over the pilots. If he's threatening a walkout, we need to show the board that most pilots don't support him." That evening, Morgan met privately with several senior pilots who had contacted her through Eliza. To her surprise, many expressed disgust with Richards' leadership but feared retaliation if they opposed him openly. "He rules through intimidation," explained Captain Sarah Lindstrom, a 20-year veteran. "Most of us just keep our heads down and do our jobs. But if you can guarantee protection from retaliation, I know at least 30 captains who would publicly support your leadership." "I need that support before Thursday's board meeting," Morgan told her. "Can you organize something by then?" Captain Lindstrom nodded confidently. "Leave it to me. It's time for a change at Aurora." As Morgan returned to her hotel that night, she received a troubling call from security at Aurora headquarters. Someone had broken into her temporary office and rifled through her files. Nothing appeared to be missing, but the message was clear. Richards was getting desperate. The next morning brought confirmation of his desperation. Media outlets began reporting that Aurora Airlines was considering a merger with Sky Global due to operational and financial concerns under new ownership. The story quoted anonymous sources within Aurora, claiming that Morgan Freeman had no aviation experience and had acquired her wealth through questionable means. Most damaging was the claim that she planned to implement mandatory diversity quotas for pilots regardless of qualifications, a complete fabrication designed to stoke fears about safety. As the media firestorm grew, Morgan received calls from wavering board members who had previously expressed support for her leadership. One after another, they offered apologetic excuses for why they might need to reconsider their position at Thursday's vote. The pressure campaign was working. Richards and Miller were orchestrating a coordinated effort to isolate Morgan and force her out before she could fully expose their misconduct. With less than 24 hours before the decisive board meeting, Morgan gathered her allies, Thomas, Eliza, Alexander, Victoria, and several others who had risked their careers to support her vision for Aurora. Tomorrow determines not just my future as owner, but the future of everyone at this airline, Morgan told them. Richards and Miller would rather destroy Aurora than see it become a place of true equality and opportunity. She looked around, at the diverse faces watching her intently. We have the evidence. We have the truth. Now we need the courage to stand together against decades of entrenched discrimination. As the meeting concluded, Morgan received a text from an unknown number. Parking garage, level 4, midnight. Come alone if you want to save your airline. Thomas immediately advised against going. It's obviously a trap. Or it's someone who can't be seen helping me publicly, Morgan countered. I'll take security precautions, but I need to know what this is about. At midnight, Morgan approached the designated meeting spot with security personnel discreetly positioned nearby. To her shock, she found Jackson Miller waiting nervously beside his car. I don't have much time, Miller said, his usual confidence, replaced by palpable anxiety. Richards has gone too far. He's planning to announce safety concerns about all Aurora aircraft at tomorrow's board meeting, completely fabricated issues that would ground our fleet and tank our stock. Why are you telling me this? Morgan asked suspiciously. Because I'm a businessman, not a fanatic, Miller replied. Richards doesn't care if he destroys the airline as long as he maintains control of what's left. I never signed up for that. Miller handed her a USB drive. This contains evidence of everything: the discrimination, the safety cover-ups, the financial misconduct. I've been keeping records as insurance. Richards found out and threatened my family if I didn't help him fight you. Morgan studied Miller's face, searching for deception. Why should I believe you? You shouldn't, Miller admitted. But verify the documents yourself. They're authentic. Use them however you need to at tomorrow's meeting. As Miller turned to leave, he added, Richards isn't just desperate. He's unstable. Be careful. Morgan watched him drive away, the USB drive heavy in her hand. If the documents were genuine, they had everything needed to secure her position, once and for all. If it was a trap, she would find out at tomorrow's board meeting. As dawn broke on the day of reckoning, Morgan prepared for the most important confrontation of her life. Whatever happened in that boardroom would determine not just her future, but the future of every employee at Aurora Airlines who had ever faced discrimination. With the evidence collected, allies mobilized, and strategy finalized, Morgan was ready for the final showdown with Richards. The sky belonged to everyone, and after today, Aurora Airlines would finally reflect that truth, or be lost forever. Morgan stood before the floor-length mirror in her hotel room, adjusting her crimson power suit, armor for the battle ahead. The past 24 hours had been the most challenging of her career. 3 key board members had called to withdraw, their support clearly having been pressured or threatened by Richards and his allies. The media continued to run stories questioning her qualifications and intentions. Aurora's stock had plummeted another 12%. Her phone buzzed with a text from Thomas. Sky Global increased their offer this morning. 25% premium now. The timing wasn't coincidental. Richards was orchestrating a perfect storm to force the board's hand, create enough chaos around Morgan's leadership that selling to Sky Global seemed like the only stable option. Morgan's phone rang, her father calling from the hospital. Today's the day, Little Wing, William Freeman said, his voice stronger than it had been all week. How are you holding up? Honestly, I'm scared, Dad, Morgan admitted. We have the evidence, but Richards has the relationships. The board is looking for the path of least resistance, and right now, that's selling to Sky Global. Fear is natural before any important flight, William replied. Remember what I taught you about crosswind landings? Morgan smiled despite her anxiety. When the crosswinds are strongest, that's when you need to be most decisive with the controls. Exactly, William affirmed. Richards is expecting you to be on the defensive today. Don't give him what he expects. After ending the call with her father, Morgan received another message, this one from William Turner. I'll be there. Richards won't intimidate me anymore. Turner's courage bolstered Morgan's resolve. One by one, she touched base with each Allie, who had risked their career to support her vision for Aurora, Thomas, Eliza, Alexander, Victoria, Captain Lindstrom, and a dozen others who had provided evidence or testimony about the discrimination they had experienced or witnessed. 2 hours before the board meeting, Morgan met with her team for final preparations. The evidence from Miller's USB drive had proven authentic and devastating, detailed records of Richard's discrimination, safety violations, and Miller's own financial misconduct. "We need to be strategic about how we present this," Morgan instructed. "The board is looking for a reason to take the easy way out. We need to make supporting me the obvious choice." As they finalized their approach, Morgan received an urgent call from Captain Lindstrom. "Richards just called an emergency meeting. Of all senior pilots," she reported. "He's formally calling for a vote of no confidence in your leadership. He's threatening that any pilot who doesn't support him will face consequences." "How's it going?" Morgan asked anxiously. "Mixed," Lindstrom replied. "Some are falling in line out of fear, but many are questioning why he's so desperate to block you. I'm working on getting as many as possible to sign our counter-statement supporting your vision." Another complication, but not unexpected. Richards was mobilizing every resource to maintain his power. Morgan only hoped they had enough evidence to overcome his influence. An hour before the meeting, the Aurora Airlines headquarters buzzed with unusual activity. News vans parked outside, alerted by anonymous sources that a major announcement was coming. Security was heightened, with additional personnel stationed throughout the executive floor. Morgan arrived early, gathering her thoughts in a small conference room adjacent to the boardroom. One by one, her allies joined her, each reporting last-minute developments and offering encouragement. William Turner arrived looking nervous but determined in his freshly pressed pilot's uniform. "I haven't worn this in 5 years," he admitted, "but I wanted the board to see me as the professional I am, not the scapegoat Richards made me." Alexander Davis came next, still reeling from his unjust check ride failure, but eager to testify about the discriminatory evaluation process. Eliza Washington brought updated statistics on how minority flight attendants were disproportionately assigned to less desirable routes and schedules. As the clock ticked closer to the meeting time, Thomas entered with crucial news. "Richards and Miller are holding some kind of pre-meeting gathering for board members in the executive lounge. They're making their case before the official meeting even starts." Morgan made a quick decision. "Then that's where we need to be. They don't get to control the narrative anymore." Together, the group made their way to the executive lounge. Through the glass doors, Morgan could see Richards holding court before 7 board members, gesturing emphatically as Miller nodded alongside him. Chairman Whitmore sat slightly apart, his expression inscrutable. Morgan pushed open the doors and entered with her team. The conversation halted abruptly as all eyes turned toward them. Richards recovered quickly, his face twisting into a condescending smile. "Ms. Freeman, this is a private discussion before the board meeting. Any discussion about Aurora's future should include its majority owner," Morgan replied calmly. "Especially when you're spreading misinformation about my intentions." Richard's smile hardened. "There's no misinformation here. I'm simply explaining the operational realities of running an airline, realities that someone with your background might not fully appreciate." The implied racism hung in the air. Several board members shifted uncomfortably. "My background?" Morgan echoed, stepping closer. "You mean my Harvard MBA? My successful investment career? Or are you referring to something else, Captain Richards?" Richards flushed but pressed on. "Let's be honest here. We all know what's happening. You're playing the race card to take over an airline you know nothing about." A shocked silence fell over the room. Richards had finally said aloud what he had only implied before. Morgan's response was measured but powerful. "The only card I'm playing, Captain, is the ownership card. I acquired 51% of Aurora Airlines because I believe in its potential. Potential that's been limited by the exact kind of discrimination you just demonstrated." She turned to address the board members directly. "For days, Captain, Richards has questioned whether I belong here. He suggested I lack qualifications despite my business success and lifelong connection to aviation. He's implied I acquired my wealth through questionable means, Despite my documented investment track record, Morgan gestured to her team standing behind her. These employees have experienced similar treatment, qualified professionals whose careers have been limited not by their abilities but by prejudice. Chairman Whitmore cleared his throat. Ms. Freeman, while I appreciate your concern, the board must consider what's best for the company's stability. Sky Global's increased offer provides certainty during a turbulent time. A turbulence created by Captain Richards and Mr. Miller, Morgan countered. They've deliberately damaged Aurora's reputation and stock price to force this sale. Miller stepped forward. That's an outrageous accusation. Is it? Morgan nodded to Thomas, who distributed folders to each board member. These documents show Captain Richards covered up a serious safety incident 5 years ago and blamed First Officer William Turner, who was terminated as a result. Turner stepped forward in his uniform, commanding immediate attention. I was fired for a mistake Richards made during a hard landing that damaged an aircraft. He falsified reports and destroyed evidence to protect himself. Richards's face paled. This is absurd. Turner was fired for cause. He's clearly colluding with Freeman for revenge. The maintenance records prove otherwise, Morgan replied, as do the testimonies of ground crew who inspected the aircraft afterward. She turned to the next page in the folder. You'll also find evidence that Mr. Miller has been embezzling company funds for personal expenses, including his daughter's $200,000 wedding last year, coded as a corporate event. Miller's composure cracked. That's taken completely out of context. The context is clear, Morgan continued relentlessly. You and Richards have exploited this airline for personal gain while systematically excluding qualified employees from advancement based on race, gender, and other factors unrelated to performance. She gestured to Alexander. This is Alexander Davis, one of our most promising pilot trainees. Despite perfect performance, he was failed 3 times by Captain Richards on subjective criteria. Yesterday's check ride was witnessed by another instructor who has provided a statement confirming Alexander's excellence. Alexander stepped forward. I've wanted to fly for Aurora since I was 10 years old. I've maintained a perfect academic record and passed every objective evaluation. But Captain Richards told me privately that some people aren't meant to be in the cockpit. Morgan continued her methodical presentation, highlighting Eliza's unfair treatment, Victoria's suppressed HR reports, and dozens of other documented instances of discrimination throughout the company. This isn't just about social justice, she emphasized to the business-minded board. Discrimination is costing Aurora millions in turnover, lost talent, and potential lawsuits. Our competitors with more diverse leadership are outperforming us in innovation, customer satisfaction, and profitability. As Morgan spoke, the atmosphere in the room shifted perceptibly. Board members who had avoided eye contact began engaging directly. Those who had seemed resigned to the Sky Global sale started reviewing the evidence with greater interest. Richards, sensing the changing tide, made a desperate final stand. This is all very touching, but the fact remains that Freeman has no aviation experience. Putting her in charge would risk our safety culture and operational excellence. Actually, came a new voice from the doorway. She has more aviation knowledge than most owners in the industry. All heads turned to see William Freeman being wheeled into the room by a nurse. Despite hospital staff objections, Morgan's father had checked himself out to support his daughter in this crucial moment. William Freeman, Chairman Whitmore said in recognition. It's been many years. Too many, William agreed. I applied to Aurora 6 times after my military service. Each time I was told there were no openings, despite my thousands of flight hours and commendations. Meanwhile, my white colleagues with less experience were hired without question. He looked at Richards with quiet dignity. My daughter grew up studying aviation manuals at my kitchen table. She can recite emergency procedures for every aircraft in your fleet. She earned her private pilot's license at 17. What she brings is not just aviation knowledge, but a vision of what Aurora could become if everyone with talent was given a fair chance. The room fell silent as the power of William's testimony registered with the board members. Richards attempted to interject, but Chairman Whitmore raised his hand for silence. I believe we've heard enough before our official meeting, Whitmore said. Ms. Freeman, are you prepared to present this evidence formally to the full board? I am, Mr. Chairman, Morgan confirmed, along with my comprehensive plan for Aurora's future, a future of excellence through inclusion, not despite it. As such, the group moved toward the boardroom for the official meeting. Richards made one final, desperate attempt to reassert control. He planted himself at the boardroom door, physically blocking Morgan's path. This is still my airline, he growled, his composure finally cracking. I've given 30 years to Aurora. I won't let you destroy everything we've built with your diversity crusade. Morgan stood her ground, facing Richards directly. Captain Richards, for the last time, do I belong here? The entire board watched this final confrontation, the symbolism lost on no one. Richards, representing the old guard of discrimination and exclusion, stood literally blocking the path forward. You will never belong here, Richards spat, his true nature fully exposed before the board and executives. Morgan opened her briefcase and removed her ownership documents. These papers say otherwise, Captain. Now I suggest you step aside before you add workplace harassment and physical intimidation to the list of offenses the board will be reviewing today. For a tense moment, it seemed Richards might actually refuse to move. Then, perhaps recognizing the career suicide that would represent with so many witnesses, he slowly stepped aside, his face a mask of barely controlled rage. The board meeting that followed was anticlimactic after the dramatic confrontation in the executive lounge. One by one, board members who had wavered now declared their support for Morgan's leadership. The evidence against Richards and Miller was simply too overwhelming to ignore. In light of the serious allegations presented today, Chairman Whitmore announced, I move that we reject Sky Global's acquisition offer and affirm Ms. Freeman's position as majority owner and new chief executive officer of Aurora Airlines. The vote was unanimous. Even those board members previously aligned with Richards recognized which way the wind was blowing. Nobody wanted to be on record supporting the discrimination and misconduct now laid bare. Additionally, Whitmore continued, I move that Captain Richards be suspended immediately pending investigation into the safety violations and discrimination documented here today. Mr. Miller will also be suspended while the financial improprieties are investigated. Again, the vote passed unanimously. As security was called to escort Richards and Miller from the building, Richards made one last bitter comment to Morgan. You may own the airline, but you'll never control the pilots. They'll never accept you. Morgan smiled confidently. Actually, Captain, she said, opening the boardroom door to reveal Captain Sarah Lindstrom standing with 30 other pilots in full uniform. I believe they already have. Lindstrom stepped forward. Mr. Chairman, we represent the majority of Aurora's pilot group. We've signed a statement supporting Ms. Freeman's leadership and vision for the company. We believe in safety, excellence, and equal opportunity for all qualified aviators. Richards's face drained of color as he realized his final threat had been neutralized. Without another word, he allowed security to escort him from the building that had been his power base for 3 decades. In the aftermath of the board meeting, Morgan addressed the assembled executives, board members, and employee representatives. Today marks a new beginning for Aurora Airlines, she declared. We will maintain our commitment to safety and operational excellence while creating a culture where everyone can thrive based on their abilities, not their appearance. She outlined her immediate priorities: an independent review of all discrimination complaints, a talent development program for underrepresented groups, and a zero-tolerance policy for harassment or bias. William Turner will be reinstated as a senior training captain, Morgan announced. Eliza Washington will head our new cabin crew development program, and Alexander Davis will receive a fair check ride from an independent examiner today. As the meeting concluded, Morgan found herself surrounded by employees expressing gratitude and sharing stories of their experiences at Aurora. For many, this was the first time they felt truly heard and valued. Later that evening, Morgan sat beside her father's hospital bed, recounting the day's events. You did it, little wing, William said proudly. You claimed your piece of the sky. Morgan squeezed his hand. We did it, Dad. I couldn't have done it without your example all these years. What happens next? William asked. Tomorrow I start rebuilding Aurora from the inside out, Morgan replied. We have a lot of healing to do, but also enormous potential to unlock. William nodded thoughtfully. You know, I never got to fly. Commercially because of men like Richards. But maybe now. Morgan smiled, already formulating a plan. How would you feel about being my personal pilot once you're recovered? The owner's jet should be flown by the best after all. William's eyes shone with emotion. I'd like that very much. 6 months after the dramatic boardroom confrontation, Aurora Airlines headquarters hummed with renewed energy and purpose. The glass-walled executive offices that had once been the exclusive domain of white male leaders now reflected the diversity of America itself. In Morgan Freeman's spacious corner office, awards and recognition lined the walls, not for her personal achievement, but for Aurora's transformation. Airline of the Year, Excellence Through Inclusion, read one plaque from the industry's leading publication. Another celebrated Aurora's #1 ranking in employee satisfaction among major carriers. Most meaningful to Morgan was the William Freeman Pilot Development Program certificate, commemorating the initiative she had launched to support aspiring pilots from underrepresented backgrounds. A knock at her door interrupted Morgan's reflections. Eliza Washington entered, now wearing the distinctive navy suit of Aurora's senior management team. The quarterly numbers are in, Eliza announced, unable to contain her smile. Profits up 17%, customer satisfaction at an all-time high, and employee turnover down 60%. Morgan nodded with satisfaction but not surprise. And the diversity statistics? Even better, Eliza replied. Minority hiring up 40% across all departments, with promotion rates now equal across demographic groups for the first time in company history. And our safety record? Perfect, Eliza confirmed. Not a single incident in 6 months. William Turner's training reforms are working exactly as planned. Morgan smiled at the mention of Turner, who had transformed Aurora's training department, with a focus on collaboration and communication rather than the intimidation tactics Richards had employed for decades. Speaking of training, Eliza continued, Alexander Davis completed his captain certification yesterday, youngest in company history. Perfect timing, Morgan noted. Has he been told about his new assignment? Not yet, Eliza replied. Thomas, thought you might want to deliver that news personally. Morgan checked her watch. I'll catch him at the pilot briefing. His inaugural captain flight is this afternoon, right? Eliza nodded. Chicago to San Francisco, a prestigious route. After Eliza left, Morgan reviewed the latest report from the independent counsel investigating Richards and Miller. The findings had been damning. Decades of systematic discrimination, safety violations covered up, financial misconduct involving millions of dollars. Both men now faced civil and criminal charges, their once sterling reputations in the industry permanently tarnished. More satisfying than their legal troubles was the cultural transformation at Aurora. Without Richards' toxic influence, the company's true potential had flourished. Employees previously marginalized found their ideas welcomed and implemented. Teams diversified and became more innovative. Customer service improved as staff felt valued and engaged. Morgan gathered her materials for the morning's press conference, an announcement of Aurora's expansion into international routes previously dominated by competitors. As she headed toward the elevator, she passed the now famous spot where Richards had first confronted her with, "Do you belong here?" The moment had been immortalized in a company values statement displayed prominently in the lobby. Everyone belongs in our sky. At the Pilot Operations Center, Morgan found Alexander Davis preparing for his first flight as captain. At 29, he carried himself with the quiet confidence of someone who had overcome significant obstacles to achieve his dream. Captain Davis, Morgan greeted him with a formal salute. Congratulations on your promotion. Alexander beamed. Thank you, Ms. Freeman. I still can't quite believe it sometimes. Believe it, Morgan assured him. You earned this through talent and perseverance, despite the barriers placed in your way. She handed him an envelope. I have a special assignment for you after you complete your certification flights. Alexander opened the envelope and read the contents, his eyes widening. International Fleet Development? You want me to help develop training protocols for the new long-haul routes? Who better? Morgan replied. Your perspective is exactly what we need as we expand globally. As they discussed the details of his new role, Morgan's phone buzzed with a reminder. I have to run to a press conference, but I wanted to deliver that news personally. Safe travels, Captain. The press conference announced Aurora's expansion plans to enthusiastic market response. Afterward, Morgan slipped away for the day's most meaningful appointment, fulfilling a promise made 6 months earlier. At Aurora's private terminal, William Freeman waited beside the company's newest executive jet. At 71, the former Air Force pilot stood tall in his custom Aurora Airlines captain's uniform, 4 gold stripes gleaming on his sleeves. Ready for our flight, Captain Freeman? Morgan asked, approaching the aircraft. William's eyes crinkled with joy. Pre-flight complete, aircraft in perfect condition, flight plan filed. We're ready for departure, Ms. Freeman. Together, father and daughter boarded the jet, William taking the captain's seat he had been denied decades ago, Morgan sitting beside him as first officer. Though her primary role was CEO, Morgan had completed her commercial pilot certification, allowing her to legally serve as co-pilot on her father's flights. Chicago executive to Martha's Vineyard, William confirmed, reviewing their flight plan. Perfect day for flying. As they taxied toward the runway, William pointed out Richard's former parking space, now converted to a carpool area for employees. Some justice in that, he observed with a slight smile. Speaking of justice, Morgan said, the William Turner case against Richards goes to court next month. Turner's lawyer believes it will set a precedent for holding individuals accountable for discrimination, not just companies. William nodded approvingly. Long overdue. How's Turner doing as training director? Exceptional, Morgan replied. He's implemented a completely new evaluation system based on objective criteria, rather than the subjective standards Richards used to exclude people. As they reached the runway threshold, William requested takeoff clearance from the tower. Permission granted, he advanced the throttles smoothly, and the aircraft accelerated down the runway. V1, rotate, Morgan called at the appropriate speeds, following proper cockpit procedure, despite the private nature of their flight. The jet lifted gracefully into the clear blue sky, climbing steadily above the Chicago skyline. William handled the controls with the expertise of someone born to fly, his decades away from commercial aviation erased by his natural talent and thorough preparation. Once they reached cruising altitude, William engaged the autopilot and turned to his daughter. You know, when you were a little girl watching me struggle against discrimination, I never imagined you'd change an entire industry. I'm not done yet, Morgan replied. Aurora is just the beginning. The mentorship program is already partnering with schools in underserved communities, introducing aviation careers to kids who might never have considered them possible. William gazed out at the endless blue horizon. The sky belongs to everyone, he said softly, repeating the family motto that had sustained them through decades of struggle. And now everyone knows it, Morgan finished. As their aircraft soared eastward, Morgan reflected on the journey that had brought her to this moment. From the little girl watching her father's dreams deferred to the woman who had transformed an airline and perhaps an industry. The path had been difficult, filled with confrontations and barriers, but the view from here, flying beside her father in a sky that truly belonged to everyone, made every challenge worthwhile. When they landed at Martha's Vineyard 3 hours later, a small crowd of employees had gathered to witness William Freeman's official first landing as an Aurora Airlines captain. The significance of the moment, a black pilot in his 70s, finally receiving the opportunity denied him in his prime, was lost on no one. As William executed a perfect landing, the assembled staff erupted in applause. For Morgan, watching her father taxi the aircraft to its parking position with precision and pride, this moment represented everything she had fought for. Not just ownership of an airline, but the creation of a world where talent and determination, not race or gender, determined how high someone could soar. What moment in this story resonated with you the most? Comment below. If you believe more companies need leaders like Morgan who stand up against discrimination, hit that like button. Don't forget to subscribe for more powerful stories of triumph over adversity, and share this video with someone who needs inspiration today. Thank you for watching. May you always claim your rightful place in whatever sky you choose to fly in. Morgan Freeman's journey teaches us that true change requires both courage and strategy. When confronting entrenched racism and discrimination, simply having ownership or authority isn't enough. You must also gather evidence, build alliances, and expose systemic problems. The story reminds us that discrimination isn't just morally wrong but also bad business, limiting talent and innovation. We learn that people like Captain Richards maintain power through intimidation and by convincing others that excellence and diversity are somehow opposing values. Yet Morgan proves that inclusion actually drives excellence by allowing everyone's talents to flourish. Perhaps most importantly, this story shows us the power of perseverance across generations. William Freeman's thwarted dreams became his daughter's motivation. His motto, "The sky belongs to everyone," embodies the fundamental truth that arbitrary barriers based on race, gender, or background only prevent our organizations and society from reaching their full potential. In the end, Morgan's victory wasn't just personal. By transforming Aurora Airlines, she created opportunities for countless others while building a more successful company. True leadership means fighting not just for yourself, but for everyone who deserves their rightful place in the sky.